2nd, 2013, Medford Township Council Budget Workshop. Begin the meeting with the open public meeting statement. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the agenda on the bulletin board at the municipal building and on the township website. Filing a copy of the agenda in the office of the township clerk at the municipal building. Forwarding a copy of the agenda to the central record and the Birmingham County Times. And forwarding written notice to each person who has requested copies of the regular meeting schedule. All the above posting, filing, and mailing will take place on the 28th of February 2013. Joe, rise for the flag salute, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Beanstalk?
Here.
Mr. Pace?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bonney?
Here.
Mayor Checa?
Here. Okay, now, when we left off actually earlier in the week on Tuesday, there were some items that the manager was going to address for us. I guess the items were the total amount of surplus, school deferral available. No?
I didn't have that.
You didn't have that
I
one?
didn't have that noted.
No, that wasn't noted.
All right, well, we need to find that number out. So that's for next time, or for Tuesday if we can. What else we got? All right, we're going to look at the reserve for uncollected taxes, and do you have anything else?
I can go through my memo. The one item was utilization of additional surplus as to what was available. The township has available $991,497. That's unaudited balance from the AFS. Being used in the budget as proposed by myself is $850,000. So there is a slight difference there. That's roughly 90%, give or take. As far as the reserve for uncollected taxes, after discussing with the auditor, the township could utilize a 3-year average of collection, which is permitted, and the average would increase the rate to 97.5% over the last 3 years, 2010, 11, and 12, which could reduce the RUD significantly to lower that 3.7 cents to about 2.22 cents. And then, of course, you could continue to cut appropriations and increase other revenues that would achieve similar results. The snow line item, there was $200,500 requested. That was reduced by myself prior to submission to $150,000. The snow trust is approximately $290,000. The trust is in a good position. I would not recommend zeroing out the line item, but if the council wanted to reduce that line item further, they could. And then the open space trust available surplus, although could not be used for obviously the current fund, but council did ask what that trust fund amount was, $745,369. And then we owe you the deferral value.
Okay. All right, and we're going to, I think we were, I don't know, I mean, we'd have to get consensus, but I'm absolutely on board moving forward, putting a question on the ballot with regard to making that open space number variable, but capping it at no more than what it is right now.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so we can move it between 1 and 3 cents.
In November.
In November.
Right. Okay,
So it wouldn't be an item for this year.
no, but I just need to make a note that has to happen before, I say August 1st, to meet the statutory deadlines of having that question to the county clerk.
We could start that process now, right? Rather than
You could have it ready to go, council could introduce the ordinance.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do it now, you can wait until the budget's out of the way and then start implementing things.
Okay. let's talk about this, the snow line a little bit. So we've got 290 in there, we're budgeting 150. So it'd be 440 in total. Now, you know, again, in the last 2 years, we've had a total of 11 inches of snow. And we spent a very insignificant amount of money clearing snow. I mean, that's not to say next week we couldn't have a foot and a half of snow. Winter's not over yet, but barring that, and hopeful that that doesn't happen, what does it cost us typically? I mean, a typical snowfall here is what, 40 inches, somewhere in that range?
The month of February average is, at least again, I was looking at some news things the other day, it's about 8 inches, which we're below. Now, that's an
No, I'm
average.
just trying to figure out an average season, an average winter, what do we get, and what's that cost to remove that average snow? I mean, I would think that's the benchmark we want to sort of shoot for in terms of what we sock away in the cookie jar here.
I have to go back more historical, because remember,
Now, granted, yeah, if you got 40 inches at once,
right.
that's going to be a problem.
The 4 years prior to this year, 2 of those years obviously were big years.
Right.
And everything works in cycles. The year prior to that was about 130,000, which I would say, from a budgeting standpoint, would probably be somewhere between 100 and 150 would be
More typical?
more typical.
Okay.
You have to remember too that you've got the back end of the year. Because you could get snow in the fall and in the winter, which is still this year.
Right, no, understood. But I mean, we've got 290 in there now.
Here's the mechanics of the trust. You know, the trust was designed to provide that backup. So you still were to budget in the line items, and then any residual, you could move whatever amount you wanted.
But that money's available.
It's available, but what I have to look for going forward as well as council is that if we have to dip into that trust, as we dip in, you're going to have to budget again to try to build that up as that's coming down.
Right, but my point is, if you know, we just don't keep building that trust up for forever.
Right, correct.
I mean, so that there's millions of dollars in there. I don't need millions of dollars to clear snow in here.
Right.
You know, I mean, I need $150,000 or so on average. I've got twice that in there in that snow trust. I mean, how much more do I need? Now I'm going to put another 150 in. That's 3 times. That's 3 times the typical that I need.
Well, but you might use some.
Understood, but if I put, let's just say I put nothing in there, I can use that 290.
Yes, the trust is available
Okay,
to use.
all right, well, that's the point I'm trying to make, there's money there.
That it's gone, money for.
Yeah, but we discussed at the last meeting as well that we're not using school tax deferral. So in the unlikely event, or the likely event, however you want to frame it, that we get a significant snowfall and we dip into the trust, or are expected to dip into the trust, okay, it can be replenished out of school tax deferral the following year to replenish that
I think
trust.
what I'm hearing, again, and maybe this develops into a policy though, is kind of, I guess I'll quit.
We want to set a benchmark
I'll
for
quit
what
my
that
easy pass.
trust
I mean, it's
should
a
be.
level, it replenishes.
All right,
And so what is that level we're willing to drop that to as we work through the budget process that protects the line item for a given year, as the mayor's pointing out, but in the event of a spike in, like the 2 years we had where we spent over $700,000 in snow, 10 and 11.
I mean,
Yeah, but that
That was
was
10, 11,
700,000 was partly because of the extreme conditions.
Well, that's a
A lot of that was
cyclical
mismanaged on
habit.
the part of your own process.
Again, it's just how do you make sure you balance it?
I hear what you're saying, and you're right, that's what we need to do. I'm not adverse, given the fact that you know, some of the things that I uncovered in the last day or two, I'm not adverse to, you know, putting in another 50 or so. I'm not adverse to that. I don't know that we need 150.
Again, you're not putting it in. You're leaving it in the line item. In the event, at the end of the year, that's when it gets moved in. If there's one.
Next year, when we put it in.
Right.
This is the money that's available for this year.
Well,
And I agree, by the way, that.
the 290
We can reduce the 150.
Yeah.
I think in your memo, you said you wouldn't recommend zeroing it out, but
Right.
you might leave another 50 there.
Yeah, that's
Take
all I
100.
suggested.
So we can put that down to 50
Yeah.
and save 100.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not averse to keeping something in there,
But then, like I said, coming out of the budget this year, I'll draft a policy and we'll develop a cap, kind
so, right,
of based on historical data.
all right,
Can I raise one issue?
Sure.
Before we move on from snow, or I know where you get to the run, before we get to that. The capital budget, there's 25,000 in the budget for down payment.
mm-hmm,
I was talking to the manager, and I think we might be able to eliminate that, because we have money left over. I think we have 35,000 from old appropriations that we can use for a down payment.
What it is each year as the town budgets money in the capital improvement for down payment purposes, if it's not used, it rolls into a trust. That was part of that value last year.
How much do we have in the trust?
35,000, which you could borrow up to.
Do we want to-
7,000. So if you, again, I'm not advocating on an annual basis, but to get, again, for this year, yeah, we have money available, we have another borrowing, and we have old dollars, which I told you that we can reallocate.
Yeah, we can
So
zero out.
you could zero out that one, but I wouldn't recommend that, every year you gotta watch.
But that's the capital fund that we're talking about for.
That's capital down payment.
Okay,
To
so
be able to
that-
borrow.
so you're gonna borrow money.
You have to put 5% down, that's gotta be cash and in the
The
budget.
money in that reserve can't be spent for actual infrastructure improvement. It has to be, that can only be used as an.
That's your down payment fund, yes.
So that's another 25.
okay, I'm good. Now,
All right, so we're in agreement to zero that 25,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because there's a balance of 35 now.
Let me, I'll re-ask like I did the other night, but right now, I've heard possibly reducing, or is there consensus, reducing the snow by 100,000 more?
Say yes.
yeah, I would say yes.
Okay. And then the CIP down payment reducing to 0 for this year.
Right.
Okay.
Now, Kathy,
Yes.
is this just for our information, this raffle permit, or we need to act on this?
That's for Tuesday night. That was part of your agenda
That's fine.
for Tuesday.
Okay. All right. So, anything else?
Well, I did note that we need to re-look at overtime in the police category, based on a review of what I cut and then what the chief believes he's going to need based on last year's dollars. That's roughly, it's 23,000. So if council was inclined to do that, we have to put 23, move 23 here. So you could offset the one and be done there and still have a $100 cut at this point in time. And the last item is just in the utility, we're re-looking at the agreement and the calculation on the value. Right now, we think it's got to be slightly higher what we're paying New Jersey American for. But I meant to attach the agreement. The mayor asked for a copy yesterday. I meant to get it all to council. So-
Yeah, I have a copy of that agreement. I went through it, and I mean, quite frankly, I'd like to see whatever this calculation is and where it went astray from, what we did previously. But that's something we're gonna need to revisit, that New Jersey American Water, and I think we need to do it before June 1st, according to the agreement. There may be an opportunity to reduce that payment, or that water purchase to New Jersey American Water this year. Now, it'll only help us part of the year, but there may be an opportunity, but it's something we need to revisit. We need to pursue that waiver as well, along with it, and that would be parallel with looking at that agreement.
As it relates to that waiver, I understand that the assemblyman contacted you in regards to that. What was the gist of that conversation?
He was on his way to a meeting with DEP, but I was not at the initial conversation. So he hit me with what's going on, and I haven't had that dialogue with any of you. So I did talk to the mayor about it. I said, my suggestion would be to talk to Assemblyman Rutter and DEP, get them all in a room together so that we're all on the same page. Because I think that the what I'm hearing is, we have an agreement with New Jersey American. I don't know that the waiver trumps paying that agreement. We still may be stuck paying the agreement. So what the Assemblyman I talked to is that he gets it. One of the things that so the public understands, with water purchases, you have to, there's a state requires a calculation. So for every 1,000 gallons the town has, you have to have 3,000 gallons available.
Nominated demand.
Yes, so you're paying $3 instead of $1, so to speak. And it's not just Medford, it's a lot of, remember years ago, Medford was not able to drill more wells when some of the developments north of 70 came online. And at the time, that was the agreement that NJAW, that was their protocol. So we're paying more than we actually need. So we draw 600,000 gallons a day. Whether we need it or not, we have to pay for that. And so we had that discussion. The Assemblyman understands that. Medford's not the only town. But again, the question would be, and it would be for Mr. Norman. I didn't have him come today, because typically the budget meeting, you know, but whether or not, how that waiver impacts that agreement, and can it impact that agreement? And that's what I think we have to kind of have that dialogue.
And I agree. Again, the question that was posed to the Assemblyman, you know, I fully expected him to take a look, contact. He sits on a committee that is responsible for that legislatively, okay? And I fully expected him to go and do some research. In regards to the contract that we have with New Jersey American Water, you know, again, from a layman's perspective, we have that contract based on the state rule, okay? And if the state waives that rule, yeah, we have to get a legal opinion to determine whether or not that impacts that contract. But from a layman's perspective, it's written into the contract. I can't imagine that it would not. So, you know.
Okay. The only other utility item while we're talking the utility budget right now, I believe there is some potential for capacity within the sewer. I want to have Mr. Guzzi look at that. And if so, remember I've been indicating we need to do the analysis. Every year we're supposed to calculate that. I believe the collection rate on the connection fee is low because we've improved the infrastructure over time. Annually, you're supposed to do that. It's the second town I've been in that hasn't done it annually. So I'm going to get an estimate from the auditor's firm, who I used in another town, that you go back historically to the time the plant was built and look at every bond and every improvement that's done, and that's a major part of that calculation. So to help the utility budget, or maybe again eat at that debt load, there may be some capacity to allow more connections and get the connection fees. So we're looking at that. That doesn't have to be done to satisfy this year's budget, obviously. And I also think council should set a policy, whether it's annually or every other year, on the rate. Just have a cursory review of that rate. Right now, the rate is still okay for our utility budget, but I think it's just good practice to develop that. And again, this council's been very good at putting these things in writing so that when you're gone, or I'm gone, or whoever's gone, that it's there, and hopefully it's harder to not do these things.
How would you do a policy? Would you recommend we did it by resolution or by
Yeah,
ordinance?
you could do both. By ordinance is always the best way, in my opinion, because this is a public process. Any change to that policy has to go through a public hearing, so that the public can get up and have their say in whether they, that's.
And there's no permanence.
Yeah, a resolution is typically an annual administrative process, whether an ordinance has permanence, it's legislation. So.
Yeah, that's something I would be in favor of.
Okay.
Real quick, back to the police department issue. In the workbook, just a cursory glance, and I asked the question at the last meeting in regards to paid and anticipated amount, whether there was a lag for those bills. The increase in office, communications and uniforms from 2012 to 2013 is about $28,770 over what we spent, what we actually spent in 2012. So I'm curious, I understand we budgeted the money, but we didn't spend the money, so why would we need an increase if we generated $28,000 surplus?
Again, I don't know that it didn't get spent. If we don't spend in one subline for the year, the department head has the ability to move within that subline. So if you're just isolating out that subline, then yes, you're going to see that. If you look at the total police budget end of year, whatever's left there, we have to go back in and look. Yeah, we have to look at where that difference was. But so again, if I have 5,000 in one subline, 2,000 in another, but they need 3 in this, and he can reduce that or she. That's perfectly acceptable within the parameters of once that budget's set, that the department is managing their budget and doing those things. So yeah, look at the bottom line. What was the difference between what was budgeted and what was actually spent? And that's the movement going on.
I think part of the issue too, and I can see Mr. Pace is looking at the paid anticipated, there is a gap in money, like he's saying, from paid anticipated to approved budget, but there were expenditures that happened that are charged back to that after the new year.
Right, and that's
And
why
they're
I
not
said-
reflected in this, because it's a moving number
Right,
constantly.
I understand.
Right.
I
Even
understand
that,
that perfectly.
when does that stop, those chargebacks? It slows.
It slows down, well, at this point, I would say it's stopped for the police department, because I think you only have about $4,000 left, period.
From operating, yes.
Any other questions about other line items?
The utility, the electrical, are we factoring it all? And presumably we're actually gonna have the solar.
I was out there yesterday, I mean, there's a lot, they've done a lot, so. I did not factor anything in, because I don't know when that's coming actually live. It will be tail end of the year, so I took the position, we're gonna budget what I did last year, and then if it goes live, that's just gonna help going forward. I'm in that mindset now, trying to look into the next year and what's gonna happen, and if it's not gonna hurt this year to do that, it can only help next year, that's.
Could we assume that we get 25% out of it this year?
There's a schedule that was part of the bid. I'd have to go back
I think
and
it
look.
was
Just saving.
July or August.
Yeah, that's
and
what I
the ability
recall.
to extend it out to September.
Yeah,
That's, I was thinking September, the last quarter of the year.
yeah, but
That's-
it's probably, you're talking,
Potentially 40 grand, right, or 30 grand.
yeah, I'd have to look at that, but.
All right, real quick, I don't mean to keep going back to this, but if you look at the overall, I gave you 2 specific examples, but the overall, paid and anticipated amount in 2012, $3,190,236. Manager approved amount for 2013, $3,286,701, a difference of $96,465. So we got $96,000, $96,465 outstanding in bills.
I just wrote a note, I'm gonna send you guys, a complete printout of where they actually stand.
Okay, well, again, like I said, a $23,000 increase in that budget, if we ran 96,000, difference in what we actually spent and what we're budgeting this year, I don't see the need. That brings it up at 36 or 23,000 to 96. We're over $100,000.
Sir,
No,
there's $154,000 that's showing left in salary and wage that's actually showing on that bottom line. That $154,000 got charged back. There's only about, what?
10,000.
10,000 left in that, 4,000 left in operating. So there's a significant portion of that has been charged back in 2012.
okay, and again, this was why I asked this question at the last meeting was why the disparity between, and
Give you an
I'll wait
example.
until you send it.
Let's give you an
That's
example.
fine.
We just settled a case. That case got charged back.
Correct.
Took a big chunk out of what that surplus or the difference was.
Right.
And, that's what happens. It's settled
Anything else?
There's one area where, you know, I know we had a lot of unexpected litigation this year. You know, I think it's pretty safe to say we have the right number down for our regular solicitor work, but do we need to add money in that area because of the fact that
I mean, we went
There is
over a little bit
litigation.
last year, but again, we were able to manage that. This is a plan. I don't, you know, we have a couple, you got MVE out there with, we're really not doing as much with, we had one labor issue that, yes, as far as I know, was dismissed, but we don't know where that's gonna go. I don't know what could come down the line. So, I'm going to have a discussion with, I'm probably going to add an executive item Tuesday, have a discussion on one of the labor discussions we're having with the last two units, which may play into that discussion.
I guess because we won't necessarily have the contract negotiations next year, we can expect that.
Right, and remember, coming out of 12, there were 4 going on, we're down to the 2.
Okay.
So, you know, I would expect that to not be as heavy, but overall, even, you know, that was one of the big chunks that we're down on, is our legal expenses over the last year. I mean, you know, it's greatly reduced.
Just an overall question on, I understand that the bottom line, that you've moved, you know, at the end of the year, we move stuff around, and but, you know, for instance, just using, because it's open to the police, I'm sure this is throughout the thing. You know, communications approved last year, 20,000, paid anticipated amount, $8,900, approved for this year, 17,500. And I understand that last year you used that and moved it around, but why wouldn't we then budget to where we needed that last year? Or do we foresee that we're going to need twice as much in communications?
Sometimes it's, the department had a game plan, but again, it's a plan, this is a planning document.
Right.
So, maybe, you know, they didn't get to do all of what they needed to do, and then I say I, meaning we move that money. We need it somewhere else in November, sorry chief, or sorry Public Works, I need it over here, I need it over here. Remember, that's the only mechanism we have, unless you do emergency appropriations, is to be able to do that. So it's a game plan, but going into that next year, some departments, you know, you keep cutting, and eventually they're trying to catch up. So they're asking for more to catch up. And I may agree with part of that, but we talked about the whole idea of savings. Well, if this is the discussion, what, you know, do I just go back, spend it?
Right.
You know, and then that's, you're trying to find that again, that balance of what works and where you can work within.
Well, yeah, and you know, I guess I'll state the obvious. The budget it's an estimate. Except for a few numbers in here, everything's pretty much a guess.
Well, and I understand.
It's an
that
educated
perfectly.
guess, but.
Well, and, okay, and to your point, it is an estimate, it is a budget, and if we're having to make that many moves around, maybe we need to plan better. Maybe we need to put that money in that area. You know, unexpected expenditures cause changes in what you budgeted, I get that, okay? It's a simple process. We all budget our money every day. And one of the problems that we have is we set a budget and we have to move things around for unexpected expenditures. That's what causes, you know, us to lose the bubble on our budget. We shouldn't lose it going in. Again,
I would disagree. We did not lose this budget. You executed a budget given last year exactly what we told the public we were going to do. Council executed, staff executed, everybody executed that budget. In my opinion, in 15 years, it was executed perfectly.
Exactly, and we spent 8909, and we're budgeting 17.5. Okay, again, I'm looking at one line item, but then I do the total, and again, I understand what you're saying. Costs increase, we have to make adjustments for those costs. We made a huge adjustment last year. I just want to make sure any adjustment up we make this year is absolutely necessary. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but you know, you're talking about each department. You're almost isolating each department. We're within an organization that you have multiple departments. I mean, it's council's budget. Council can move. It's not, you know, I've recommended when I've recommended, staff had 2 issues, we brought them back to say, you know, that we may have calculated here or there. But however, you know.
I'm done. Okay. So we'll get the answer. You have anything else? Other line items? Jeff? Other line items?
Do we have consensus on the 2 representatives of the manager for the utility and overtime?
I would suggest focus on the current fund. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then we jump into the utility. I think commingling the discussions is going to not help. But you understand what I'm saying?
I think so, but you had made recommendations to us, I just wanted to get a sense of
That's fine.
what we were. And we don't have to do it now, I just.
No. Anything else? All right, how about you, Chris?
I have nothing else.
All right, well, let's start talking about our favorite subject, the RUT, the Reserve for Uncollected Taxes. You know, the whole concept, I mean, the idea of it has disturbed me from last year when I saw that it's a line item in our budget. And, you know, but it's statutorily required, we're required to account for those taxes that we don't otherwise collect, because obviously we need to pay and make whole the school district and the county on an annual basis. So we have to make them whole. So we have to account for 100% of the taxes, even though we don't collect 100% of the taxes, which would be expected. We're never going to collect 100% on an annual basis. From, you know, over the last few years, our collection rate has degraded as the economy has sort of stalled and spits and starts, the economy's gone. So last year we were at 97.18, and this year we were projected to go to 97.1. You know, our RUT was calculated to go from approximately $2 million last year to about $2.45 million this year. So it went up about $450,000, which was driving a substantial part of the overall increase to the budget that was required. And the amount of the taxes that the manager recommended in his original transmission of the budget was going to go up about $1,030,000, even though our overall budget was going down $960,000. And that was driven by 2 things. The RUT, which is about a $450,000 increase, and an increase in our debt service payment, which went up about $438,000 or so. So about $900,000 of that million that he was requesting in additional taxes was related to 2 items. So Deputy Mayor Boney took a look at that and said, gee whiz, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, and I've been looking at it ongoing, and the rest of the council as well. I mean, it's a number we scrutinize very greatly because, you know, it's difficult for me to understand why I have to account for this in my budget. In the municipal budget, I've got to pay for everyone. So we went back, I reviewed the statute on the calculation of the reserve for uncollected taxes. And there are a number of different methodologies you can use to collect or to calculate that reserve. The one we used originally in the transmission of the budget was just a straight calculation. You know, the taxes we collected over the certified tax levy last year. that was the number we used, and we came up with 97.1%. But there are alternate calculations you can use, and there's reasons for them in the statute. And the first calculation you can do is you can take an average of your last 3 years of your collection rate in order to smooth out when you've got a period of degrading tax collection. It allows you to smooth out that number. So we had the accountants do that calculation, and it actually increased our collection rate to about 97.5%. So it was about a 0.004 increase in our collection rate, which obviously reduced the rut. So we were able to reduce the rut somewhat. But there's another calculation that's permitted by statute. And then what this calculation does is it allows us to take the certified tax levy from last year and reduce that certified tax levy for all the county tax appeal judgments that were entered. So in other words, reduction in the amount of taxes that people paid. So what does this do? It reduces the overall amount of our certified tax levy, which, because we collected the same amount of taxes, is going to increase our collection rate. And I had the accountants do that yesterday, and our collection rate went from the revised rate under the average from 97.5 up to 98.38%. And when we use that calculated rate, essentially what it does is it zeroes out our tax rate for 2013. So, now again, this is all preliminary. I don't have the actual calculations from the accountant. He took the numbers right off the annual financial statement, so the numbers that aren't just, we sort of just took them from somewhere. They're numbers that are on our annual financial statement. They're used in the calculation. So what we end up with is preliminarily, again, and I'll caution that, again, these were just verbal communications I had with him. He calculated the rate, he called me back, we discussed it. The RUT goes from what we had originally got transmitted of 2.441 million to 1,344,000. So that's a difference of 1,097,000. The manager was asking for an overall tax increase of 1,030,000. So actually, we're a little bit heavier than what we're requesting. So that's where we are now. And if those numbers hold, we should be able to get to a zero for 2013 in terms of the tax rate. So we should be able to stay flat. So again, that's where we are. Now the accountant did caution me. He said, look, you can use this. These are statutory calculations. We're absolutely permitted to use them legally. He said, however, if our tax collection rate doesn't hit that 98.38%, we will be a little light in terms of this year's budget. But, and again, I discussed this with him, I discussed it with the manager. I'm confident that the township's exposure, even if we use that rate, and again, this is a statutory rate. We're permitted to do it by statute. It's completely legal. We're following it to the letter of the law. I'm confident we have a new tax assessor who, my understanding is very aggressive in terms of collecting delinquent taxes. And I have a feeling that rate will tend to improve. And let me finish. Number two, I think there are opportunities within the budget where if we needed additional funds, we can move things around. Now, again, that's all dependent on how things go. Mother Nature, human nature, things can happen that either degrade the budget or enhance it during the year. I think that the risk is probably minimal at best in terms of exposure to the township by using that revised rate. And my recommendation is that we move forward with that in terms of calculating our reserve for uncollected taxes for this year.
With that, because of the fact that we're basically saying the real number is, including the adjustments made from the set rate, isn't that actually more accurate? Wouldn't the 98% reflect a more accurate?
Yes, again, the two methodologies that are employed, other than the standard methodology, the one is in order to smooth the rate in your period of degrading collections. The other one is for when you have substantial tax appeals. And we went through a reval last year, and we had substantial tax appeals. And there are adjustments to that certified tax levy. And you're correct, it is a more accurate depiction of what we collected over the total, the real certified tax levy. So yes, it is more accurate.
So Frank, I have a question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but if we do this and we use the lower RUT number, is it likely that next year we would go back up to the higher RUT number, or is it likely to stay at this level?
We can elect, these are elections, you do them annually. You can elect from year to year, you can change methodologies.
But we're not going to have the same amount of reduction in taxes from tax appeals because we're coming up, in 2013, we're coming up the reval. So what I'm trying to figure out is if, so we're not going to be able to reduce the RUT, but is the RUT going to be based on the tax assessments from 2013, which are likely to be closer to the 2012 assessments after the tax appeals?
Well, didn't we lose revenue though by those taxes being appealed? So that's why I'm asking. I think it's a more accurate number. The lower RUT number.
And that's what, right, I picked up on what you said, and that's why I'm wondering if it's not going to stay at that level for next year.
It may, I mean, and again, it may improve, if, if our tax assessor, does, what we think she's going to do.
Because if it goes back up, then it's, what we're doing this year is essentially a one-time revenue. But if it stays at that level, then it's more of a permanent reduction, and we won't have to.
Well, I think,
Well, that RUT has the potential to fluctuate up and down based on, we can't.
I get that. I get that completely, but I'm just trying to get some sense. And again, this is all estimates, this is all planning. I'm just trying to get some sense of what we could expect going forward, knowing that we're doing this budget for 2013, but we certainly have to think about the future as well.
right, well, I absolutely understand what you're saying.
And that may be more of a question for the auditors.
Right.
And I think, and I hear what you're saying, I appreciate everything that you've done in doing this. I think it's great if we're going to be able to come out, right? I'd like to hear from the auditor. I'm hoping, I know we have another budget meeting on the 12th.
Yeah,
Right, and I want to see the hard calculation too. I mean, and the backup for it as well, just to make sure. But, again, I mean, I can't say for certain what's going to happen, but we do have those options available to us on an annual basis. So we can calculate them 3 different ways and take the lowest of those 3. We're entitled to do that on an annual basis. Now, if we decide to elect to use this methodology, we will have to pass a resolution evidencing that we elected to use this methodology under, the statute.
Now, that begs the question, because we just clipped 100,000 out of snow. You don't like where this is going, but do we clip the rate? Do we send that money back? Do we start to cut the rate now, or do we?
I think that's a little overreach.
I don't disagree with
I'm a
that.
creature of stability
Right.
and not, I don't take as many risks. I still believe there should be a nominal tax increase.
I think we need to have,
Anything. That's my opinion.
I would rather look at a policy that pays down debt.
Well, that's an alternative, to take that money and pay down debt.
But I don't want to collect more than we need to either. And that,
No.
But I think that I would want to take, because, we have to see where our actual collections are next year, now that the rate's going to be a little more stable.
I guess and Mayor and I did have a discussion, and having slept on it, again, I'm a creature of stability and not taking major risks. I hear where this is acceptable, I'm not gonna deny that. I just think, you know, the town came out of a
Wait a
period, and although we made significant improvements, I just want to continue down that path and just ensure that we don't underestimate to upgrade. So,
I don't want to collect more than we need to, but I think the way that we manage the utility budget, and we said, look, if there's a surplus, we'll pay down debt. If it turns out that, at the beginning of this year or next year we have a surplus, I'd like to just consider that money is going to go right to debt payment. It's because we, really, that debt, and there's a reason for that. That debt was accrued with the people who are living in town.
what I would suggest is not just define it as debt, but liability. Because again, last year I utilized it to pay off compensation that was a liability on our books. So I think if Councilman develops policy, would include any liability,
not just
and not just debt, and then, then we can look at that going forward and how to deal with that. That's all I would say.
That would be my, because I agree with you as far as being stabilized, and we need to see what it takes us. But, I just want to have that mindset.
I think, initial reaction is that it's really great news that, potentially we don't have to have any tax increase and with this calculation. I look forward to hearing the auditor's actual report, meeting with them, because, the concern is, while it's 100% legal and all that's some of those 100% legals is what got us into the situation we're in right now. So I think we just need to be really careful and make sure that, as Councilman Beanstalk said, that not only are we balancing our budget this year, but we're not setting ourselves up for next year to then be in a difficulty. And if that means a very slight increase, I'd be willing to consider that.
No, you're right, and that's why we need to have the hard calculation, and we also need to hear from him what he thinks about what next year would look like.
And I'd like to know what our actual, the impact of those lowered assessment, what was our actual, because we projected revenue coming in, but we really didn't have the opportunity to collect it all if those, right?
Well, you lost somewhere in the range of 38 million in valuation last year, I think. And then last year's, we won't know this year yet. The residents have until April 1st to file their appeals. We do still have outstanding value at the state level. So the new assessor, it's the collector who's collecting on the collection side. The assessor, now the new assessor, once he started Friday, trying to get him caught up to look at those numbers and looking forward.
So just to summarize, let's say these numbers hold, and we can hold it at a zero rate. The budget, as it would be presented at that, uses no deferrals. They only thing it uses from last year is the surplus, which is typical. No one-time revenue enhancements.
There are one-time revenue.
What are the one-time revenues?
You're at an auction.
Okay, all right. Yes, all right. The sale of the vehicles.
Yeah, sale of vehicles.
Okay, what else?
FEMA, we've applied for FEMA funds,
Okay.
and it could be a one-time,
Did we have that budgeted in here?
it's in there.
Okay.
The
how much?
library, 30,000 is technically
How much?
one time right
Okay,
now.
so-
No, it's not.
Yeah, but we,
So how much in total are we talking about?
About $480,000.
Okay, so there's $480,000 in one time between the vehicles, the library, FEMA money.
Library's not a one-time revenue, sorry.
Well,
No, it's not.
Hopefully.
No, I'm saying right now, technically it is. But technically, right now, I can't even send that budget to the state with it because you don't have an agreement.
And
I don't care if you pull that out, but I'm not,
you can take that
I'm
out.
not funding the county library.
I mean, it's,
On,
it's,
Not the street dog, not the library. The street dog.
Harrods. Chapel. The Chapel Avenue contribution on the developer switching into our funds to do that. That's
Okay.
it.
all right,
So they're the major ones.
okay,
So the big one's the auctions.
okay, so we're about 550.
I'd actually like to see take that line item out. If that's gonna hold up.
That's what I'm just saying, technically right now, it cannot be
I'm
sent
not
to
gonna
the
be
state.
subject to their games, but I'm telling you,
I agree, we should take it out. We don't-
That's fine, take it out.
Let them-
Take it out, I mean, like
We're
I
playing
said,
enough games, I'm not giving them that.
if these numbers hold, I mean, there's 70 grand over and from the rod. I mean, there's a little money there. Plus there's, you know, we modify the snow trust and some other items, there's a little bit of money there. In terms of that, the one-time revenues, I mean, obviously, that would have to be made up next year, in terms of budget. So, right, 350 for the vehicles. So, I mean, and, you know, as I look down the items for the year, in terms of what we budgeted, and again, I mean, it's all based on, you know, if things break our way, you know, I mean, we'll have some benefits in terms of expenses and revenue. If things don't break our way, well, we won't. I mean, and that's, you know, again, it's an estimate, but, I mean, I think there's some opportunities in here with regard to the changeover in healthcare. You know, we keep building surplus, we do have some surplus we're building, about 140,000. You know, I don't know that we fully accounted for the impact of, you know, tipping fees for the year. And I know that's pretty hard to estimate. You don't really know till the end of the year. But I have a feeling that we're going to do better from that standpoint as well. I don't know how much it's going to be. And obviously, the factoring the solar project coming online in terms of what we need saved towards the end of the last quarter of the year.
Now, you factored in the increase that the county put on the tipping fees? as part
Yes,
of our-
but I also factored in a reduction of commercial. We've estimated about $100,000 that the community is supporting those businesses that do have it through us.
I just think it's important for people to know that that's a hidden tax that's coming down from the county. You know, your tipping fees at your landfill went up 2% this year, okay? And they are charging us more money than other counties are charging their townships. People need to know that, because there are ways to raise taxes and say you didn't, and that's one of them. That's a substantial hit we take, and with those tipping fees.
And just to be clear, because it may beg the question, why not go to another county? There's a Supreme Court decision that says we're forced to go to the county when the county implements a flow requirement. They have in Burlington County. So could we have saved a couple $100,000 by shopping around? Sure, Camden, Cumberland County is, I think, the cheapest. You could have saved anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 more, which is a penny, almost a penny.
It's a lot of money.
By going outside of the county. But the county also ties us into their system with the countywide recycling. So it's the county, it's all intertwined, and we're talking.
What was the approximate cost if we were collecting on this?
That, I have not, that's part of this year's kind of, let's go talk to counties and towns and counties that do their own recycling and how they're doing on the commodity sale. Because typically what happens, they control that sale, and then they, you know, they all, whatever the vendor gets, everything else goes.
That has potential to turn a profit.
It does, and that's
Real
what,
potential to turn.
but again, because we're tied into our county landfill, it's.
Well, see,
so
what I saw, they're making an 18% profit margin on that dump.
Right.
Okay, that's, if I understand the budget numbers, I'll look at it again, but, you know, the understanding that I have from that court case is, it's based on a necessity for us to be in there. That's why they can hold us in, because they can't operate it without the revenue coming in from us. But if they're making an 18% profit, it's about a $5 million profit, I don't understand how we can be bound.
I'm not disagreeing, that's a discussion for council with their attorney, because that, obviously there is a, under the Supreme Court decision, there's the pipe test. But, you know, now to talk about the legal budget and what that would entail and whether that's a decision council has to make.
Hopefully now we can get some revenue.
All right, anything else on the rest? All right, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. let's go over our list here.
Yes,
School deferral,
yes. How much available in school deferral council needs?
right,
The ballot, 1 to 3 cents for the open space variable, but that's just a item down the road. Snow, currently reduce it by 100K.
right,
Reduce the capital improvement by 25.
we need to get a hard calculation of the RUT from the accountant.
Yep, accountant,
New
and
Jersey American Water, the calculations.
calculation, and I'll make sure all the council gets the agreement. And remove the library, I heard.
Yes.
That's 30K out of revenue.
It comes in, it's.
Comes in, it comes in,
It's-
but there's no way that I'm gonna let that item hold the
Okay.
budget.
So between now and the next meeting,
It's just a 12.
we'll have these calculations. So the only, and Kevin will be back Monday presumably, and I'll make sure him and Mike all have connected and everybody's on the same page.
Okay, good. All right, so, any other items?
Right, do
What?
we added in the overtime.
No.
We can talk
You
about
want to revisit, we have the numbers from the chief.
I think we need to look at it, but I think
Yeah.
for the time being,
Yeah,
if
it's
it's been
good.
requested, let's put it in there for now.
So how about we just neutralize the CIP, I just move the CIP to that.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
then so-
fine.
Okay.
That'll give us time to look this over.
Okay.
That's requested.
CIP,
All right,
all right.
okay. Anything else? No? Okay. So I think we made some substantial progress today. So I'm going to open the meeting to the public now. Anyone having any comments, questions on items on the budget, please step forward, state your name, address, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Young?
George Youngkin, 13 Regency Court. Good morning, gentlemen. I heard a lot of buzzwords in this morning's meeting. I'd like to comment on them. I heard surplus, heard snow removal, I heard legal monies. First, I'd like to touch on the snow removal process, and I heard you say you're going to look back at, say, the past 10 years. You're going to look back and see what you spent. You know, I agree with that technique. One of the things that you don't have the privilege of looking back at is you now have a reduced public workforce. So those numbers that you're going to derive from the past 10 years will be slightly different because, as I understand it, if we did get a significant snowfall, you would not have the manpower, readily available manpower, to tackle the snowfall. And I understand we would outsource some of that. So I would think that those costs would be a little higher than normal. I don't know whether you took that into consideration or not.
Not at this point. Remember, if in the past, though, you did have a workforce, and that was all time and a half, and you factor all that in. So when you compare that to an outsource, look what happened with the sanitation model. So, you know, it may be the same value. It's just now we're paying an outsourced vendor. I don't know.
You know, I understand that concept. I work for public service, electric and gas, and our workers make X amount of dollars in compensation, retirement, pension, and all that stuff is factored into that. And when we go outside and hire contractors on the outside, typically that's added into the cost, so that drives our cost up a little bit when we hire contractors to do the work that we can't get to. So it's just a consideration. I don't know whether that was factored in. Second thing I heard was the surplus. And, you know, I agree with your comment, you know, you look to pay down debt. You know, and I hoped we would look at the long-term bonds and try to stretch those out. Right now, there's lower rates, and I know you guys are looking at that stuff.
We just refinanced
Yeah.
it, didn't increase the term, and we
Yeah.
got a lower rate.
Right, so, you know, I don't disagree with that direction. One of the things that I just want to go on the record as saying is, you can't pick up the newspaper in Medford anymore without seeing what I consider weird crime. I mean, we're getting all kinds of different things that typically in this township we haven't seen in the past. You know, road rage incidents, a luring thing on the computer recently. I mean, it's a scary time that we live in. You know, not just this town, but national news as well. And I hope that some of that surplus, I mean, I know you guys are going through a negotiation with the police department. I just hope that you would maybe consider looking to spend a little bit more money in the police department. And that ties into my liability issue too. You know, if you get something weird happens and we don't have the manpower to cover said situation, whether that's going to come back to bite us in the end. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public portion? So moved. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have anything else? No, if not, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Meeting adjourned.